So enough about me. We'll start getting into the content of today, which we're really going to focus on delivering ideas to production. So our end goal here really is we have an idea and we want to get it to our customers really as quickly as possible. But in order to be able to get that feedback and insights from the customers to ensure that we're even meeting their needs. Are we on the right track? Are we building the right thing? So just take a minute as well and kind of imagine if we could take a business idea and have it deployed to production in a matter of days or even hours, how would that impact our customers and how would it change our business as a whole? So some of the common challenges that we've noticed as well working with different organizations and clients on different projects are the following. So are we working on the right thing? We might be doing a lot of work, but are we working on the right thing that's actually providing value to our customers? Are we meeting the needs of the users? And does our work really align with an overall business or strategic objective? Are we on track to deliver to meet the milestones and expectations of our users in the business? And are we making progress on our goals and delivering value? How do we validate that our changes are even meeting the requirements? And did our recent changes break any type of functionality? And are we able to deploy efficiently our changes to each environment so that we can catch any issues early on in the process and being able to correct those before we actually get it to the end users? Sometimes as well, we ask ourselves, what environments have our changes even been deployed to? Do we know exactly what environment our changes are in? And what features have we delivered to the users that we're ready to get feedback on? And are we continually improving our ability to deliver and continually improving our processes and our speed, but more so also is our efficiency. So these are just some of the challenges and questions that come up on different projects, and they're really coming from a lot of different roles within the organizations as we work towards delivering solutions. So some of these are often difficult to address using multiple tools that may not be integrated together. So let's take a look at really the different steps and really the big picture of taking an idea and getting it to production. All right, so every idea starts either with some feedback from customers or maybe from internal operations, or maybe it's a brand new business strategy. So we need to have a way to be able to manage that portfolio of our products and those ideas coming in. So typically as well, then we have those projects that maybe are going to get assigned to different stable delivery teams. Then we need to be able to deploy those changes to the apps as well as to the infrastructure. And last but not least, we really want to be able to get that feedback from the customers to make sure that we are validating, are we meeting their needs and are we delivering them value? So how we have been able to accomplish this with many different projects that we've been working on is really using the tool Azure DevOps. One thing to keep in mind as well is that it's really not just a tool for developers. A lot of people have that misconception. It's not just a place to store their code, but it's really an overall comprehensive tool that allows us to support organizations of any size to help them deliver ideas to the users. So these are some of the main services that are come together in Azure DevOps, from the Azure Boards to the repos, the pipelines, test plans, and artifacts. So it's really that comprehensive product that really brings all parts of the organization and delivery together with full traceability from beginning of that idea all the way to the end when it is delivered to the end users. So today we're really going to take an opportunity to explore the different areas within Azure DevOps and how we utilize them on different projects. All right, so we will start off with a demo. The first area that I'm really going to demo is going to be the Azure Boards. So this really allows us to track the work that's being done, track those ideas and those projects, and being able to get those then moved onto teams so that they can execute on those. Out of the box, Azure DevOps also has a lot of different types of customized work item templates, including those that are ready for Scrum teams or Kanban teams. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with the demo. All right, apologies. All right. Here we go. All right, so when you first get into Azure DevOps, one of the recommendations that we give to our clients as well is you can have one single team project or one single project in Azure DevOps for your entire organization that really brings in the whole idea of a unified backlog across the organization into play. So we have one team project for an organization. However, when we look at then how we can configure that project and be able to support and scale to multiple teams as well, then we're going to start taking a look at a couple of the different items that we use for that configuration, which is going to be the iterations and then the areas. So the iterations here, you can see that we have our deliver on demo 1, which is really our organization at that highest level. And then we have a hierarchy that follows that to be able to break out different teams. So we have a team A, a team B, and a team C. Now we also have then here underneath the team A and then also team B and team C, we have their different sprints set up. So for sprint team A, we have sprint 1 that runs from 9/2 to 9/15. But then this is really how we configure those different sprint iterations for each of the teams, because they may also be working on different cadences as well. So at each of these levels then as well, we have, for the team's perspective, we've allowed it so that only team A only has access to their team or their team sprints, team B only has access to their sprints, and then team C as well. So when we look at the area paths then, and the areas are really how then we manage our portfolio and our product portfolio. So we have here the different applications. So we might have an application here that has multiple features and then maybe even sub features as well. And the same with application 2. How we can use this then as well is maybe team A only works on a work for application 1. So we can then even assign that area path specifically to team A. Maybe application or team B only works on application 2, so we can assign that directly to that team as well. Or if multiple teams work on multiple applications, you can really assign at that highest level. What is really helpful once we get started with the work items as we move along through the demo as well is one thing that we also use these area paths for then is that then we can trace back all of the work that's being done on these applications or on these features, which is awesome so that you can be able to see how much work are we putting towards this application or maybe this feature, or how many bugs maybe tie back to specific features. All right, so now we're going to take a look directly at the boards, really from that overall program and portfolio perspective. So I'm going to navigate here to the demo backlog board, which we look at, so you can look at an epic work item really as a higher level project portfolio management. So in this view, it's really at that organizational level, we can see exactly what projects we have in progress. I don't know how many organizations that we started working with initially that maybe even had Azure DevOps but hadn't been utilizing it yet, but maybe they had a room with sticky notes on a wall that's showing them what projects were in progress or what had been completed. Another client that I worked with recently as well really had no way to track what projects were in progress or what they had even completed. So this is a great view for an organization at that strategic planning level to be able to prioritize and then view where projects are at in the pipeline as well. So we can also see exactly what projects have been completed, those are in progress, and those that have already gone through, say, that initial review and analysis and are ready to be handed off to a team. All right, so now we're going to take a look at this view from a backlog view. So from here then, we've seen our projects from the epic level, and now I want to be able to assign one of these projects to my team. So Team A already has this feature, but say that we also want Team A to take this feature 2 of Project 6. Now I can just select those work items and I can easily drag and drop it over here to Team A. So now those work items are going to go into the backlog for Team A, but I can still track them and manage the progress and be able to see the progress from my organizational view. So next we're going to go into the sprints. So we are going to go into Team A's. Actually, let's go over to Team A's backlog first. So now that I've just moved that work over to Team A, I can see here at a features perspective, we have feature 1 and feature 2 with those user stories that are already broken out. Just a quick caveat here, typically we don't use these short type of titles on our work items when we're actually working on a project. These are just for demo purposes as well. All right, so say we are ready to plan for our next sprint, which is sprint 4. So we need to fill our sprint backlog of work items. So we can easily take a look here from the stories from a features perspective, as well as a priority perspective, and do the same drag and drop that we just did to get them mapped over to the team. So I can take these top 7 user stories and we're going to put them in sprint 4 for Team A. All right. So now as I go here, I'm in the sprint 4 backlog view for Team A. What's really cool as well is that there's a lot of customization that you can add to the boards and really all throughout the tool to really make it work for you the best. So I want to make sure that I can see story points. So I can really add any of these different columns here and then even move them so that I want to maybe see them right after the state instead of at the very end. I can then also, let's go ahead and I want to add the area path value as well so that I can see these stories relate to application A and feature A, or application 1, feature A. All right, so now from here, say we've already gone through planning and we have are defining our user stories. These typically would not be blank. One other thing that you'll notice as well, so we are using the Agile work item template in Azure DevOps. One other thing that is awesome about the tool is that you can customize the work item templates by adding additional fields. You can also add additional work item levels. So say if you want to add a strategic objective type work item that maybe lives above the project, you can do that as well. Here in the Agile work item template that came out of the box, we went ahead and added the fields to support having the role, goal, and reason in our user story work item template. We've also added a field to be able to identify what we call as our stat group. So we really use that stat group field for then prioritizing our stories from a must-have, should-have, or nice-to-have perspective. We also have our story points. We're going to assume that we have our AC in here as well, and we have committed to our backlog of user stories for this sprint. So now, one of the next things that we want to do as well is we want to make sure that we have our team's capacity added here. So we have all of our team members on a sprint by sprint basis. We have all of our team members added. You can identify the activity that that person is more or less responsible for doing. So Bob works primarily on development. Joe is doing testing. John and Mike are also developers, and I'm a tester. So you can then put in your capacity per day allowance. So how many hours do these team members then have to be able to dedicate to working on their tasks for the sprint per day? You can also identify then, does anybody have any time off? So let's say this sprint, Bob is going to be taking, since the sprint's almost done, Bob is going to take the next couple of days off. So we're going to update his capacity to reflect that he only has, or he's going to be taking a day off here. So let's go back to our backlog. So now that we have committed to our user stories and we have identified our team's capacity for the sprint, we need to identify the work that's going to be done for the sprint as well. So we're going to come in here and we're going to identify a couple or some of our tasks. So we're going to say, here's a dev task, and we're going to assign this to, or we're going to say it's a development task. And we're estimating that this is going to take 5 hours. And I'm going to assign this over to Mike. All right, so now I'm going to also add, let's add a testing task. All right. Testing. And we'll say testing is going to take maybe about 4 hours. So we would go through and create our task for just to really reflect all of the different work or tasks that need to be completed in order to close that story. So now I can come over here then and say, well, do we have enough capacity to complete all the tasks that we've committed to? By turning this work details pane on, then I can easily see from the whole team's perspective, we have 9 out of 54 hours available, and we have plenty of capacity right now that we can fill up. Granted, I've only created a task for one story. But then, since I identified the activity type on those tasks, I can then easily see how much development capacity do I have compared to the development tasks we have. Same with testing. Now I can also drill down into, is anybody over allocated tasks? And so this really gives you an idea too, do we need to move tasks from maybe one developer to the next or one tester to the next, or maybe if we are over capacity from a testing perspective, maybe we need to have some of the developers jump in and really help test as well. So as we are going through the sprint and executing on those tasks, then we'll be able to see our burn down chart that really will then plot out our capacity per day, and are we on track to be able to complete everything that we've committed to. All right, so that's really covering then how we can take a project from a portfolio perspective, get that assigned over to a team. The team would break down the user stories and then plan for each individual sprint, but then also break down the work for the user stories that the team has committed to for the sprint. All right, so next, let's go ahead and we're going to talk about the Azure test plans. So this section is very near and dear to my heart. I have a background in testing as well. And so the Azure test plans feature is one of my favorites because I don't know how many, even in my background as well, I don't know how many of you guys are using the tool Excel to manage and track your testing or even document test cases, but we still have a lot of clients when we first start engaging with them that they are still using a tool like Excel or some other type of Word document just to store and create their test plans. which that's fine and that might work. However, it often does not provide you that traceability then back to the requirements, which having Azure test plans embedded into the tool allows for that traceability of that test case directly back to your requirement. But then it also allows you to execute that as part of the tool and have really all of those test results tied right back to the work as it's getting completed. So let's go in here and take a look at test plans. All right, so I am going to, let's go to test plans. I'm going to go ahead and create a new test plan for the sprint for my team. So I can just say create test plan. So we are team A and it is sprint 4. And if I have a specific area path for the team, I can assign that. But really, I care right now more about assigning the correct team and iteration path. And now this is going to create a brand new test plan that has no test suites in it quite yet. So one of the really cool things about Azure DevOps test plans is that there's 3 different types of test suites that can be used. A static suite is just a folder that allows you to create some hierarchy if you want to, but you have to manually pull any test case into that suite. There's also the requirements-based test suite. So I'll be showing that to you here in 1 minute, but we'll be able to then create a requirements-based test suite, which a suite is a folder, then that ties back to a user story. And then the query-based test suite is also really cool as well. So we typically use the query-based test suites as we are building out our regression test plans. So that really allows you to create a query so that based off of the criteria that you've defined in the query, any test case that meets those requirements will automatically be added to that test suite. So let's take a look at how we would pull in our test cases then for a sprint. So you can see here I've selected to create a requirements-based suite. I want to select my, so I'm going to update this query criteria up here on the top to say I want to pull in all of the requirements for Team B Sprint 4. So when I run this, excuse me, I want Team A Sprint 4. All right. All right, so then we have all of the user stories that we just had pulled into Sprint 4 for Team A. And then I can say create suites. And this is now going to create a test suite for all of those test cases or all of those user stories that we had committed to for Sprint 4. Now, directly from here, I can say I want to add a new test case. All right, and again, this is another work item template that we have customized. So on our projects, we also do the behavior-driven development format to break down test cases. So really using that given, when, and then statement as part of our test case creation. So you have your title. I'll just call this test case 1. Now, and you'll also notice that this does tie back, it inherits then the area path that's been assigned to that user story. So already from the user story all the way down to the test case, I can tie this back to a specific feature or sub-feature within the application. All right, so I'm gonna just put some steps in here real quick. So you can identify your different steps that you need to execute as part of this test case. And we'll say our expected result is here. All right. And now I'm going to save this, and I would continue to go through and create any test cases that I would need in order to validate the acceptance criteria on that test case or for that user story. One thing to also note is when I go here to my linked work items, is I can now see that this test case that I've created traces back to user story 1. So it really provides that full traceability even from the test case back to that user story. One other thing you might notice here is the associated automation. If you are delivering automation as part of your project as well, or you're automating any of these test cases, you can associate that automation directly to these test case work items as well, which is a huge value add, because then too, you can add those test cases to your release pipelines, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. All right, then from here, I can run it directly from the application, and I am going to get a window, a test runner window that's going to pop up, and I can execute through these steps. So step 1, yep, it passes. Step 2, so I might have the application on one pane or one side of my screen, but I can really clearly execute through the steps since they're presented to me on the left. Now say step 3, which has my expected result. Let's say this fails. I can mark this step as failed, and I can say, I can add a comment here. Clearly I would put more content other than failed here, but directly from this execution then, I can create a bug work item. So what then this is going to do is that this is going to pull up a bug, or it's going to create a bug work item in Azure DevOps. Again, it's going to inherit the feature that this is working on in the area path. But more importantly, it's also going to bring me back all of the repro steps. So the steps from my test case and the outcome of each of those steps. So step 1 passed, step 2 passed, but step 3 failed. And this was the expected result, but this is the actual result. So really all I have to do at this point is assign it over to the person or Mike, give it a title, and save and close it. And then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to save and close my test case, and that's then going to mark this test case as failed. All right, now when I open the test case and I go to my linked work items, I'm going to have my user story here, as well as when I go back to my user story, I'm now going to be able to also see the bug that we just created. So then when I, as the team, would go back, say, to my sprint board, and I'm going to switch over to a kind of another view of the sprint board, which is the task board. So you can see those different columns that the work or the tasks fall into and what's in progress. So I now see for user story 1, out of the work that needs to be completed, now I have this new bug. And so we can just drag and drop that into active to signify that Mike is starting to work on that bug. So everything is really tied together, but being able to use the test plane feature within Azure DevOps and having that full traceability from the test case back to the requirement is really a huge value add. All right, so that really wraps up the test plan side. Let's go ahead and take a look now at delivering the actual solution to the users using Azure Pipelines. So this is really the perfect launch pad for your code, being able to automate your builds and deployments so you can really spend less time getting things manually moved and manually run, and more time really delivering value here. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I am going to switch over slightly to a different project here. So really this step really starts with the pull request process if you're using Git. So we have, once you've made a change and committed that change, and then you can create a pull request to request that change gets merged into your branch. So I'm going to come in here and just show this one as an example. So we have one that a change that Mike made. And this really lives within the Azure repos section. So we've made a code change, we submitted a pull request, One really cool thing as well about the pull request, you can also define different policies at the branch level. So in order for this pull request to be approved, there's certain things that have to happen. So we can't even merge this code until there are certain criteria met. So one, you can see what those policies are over here. So we need to have one reviewer that has approved their pull request. We need to make sure that the work items are linked and that all comments are resolved and that the build succeeds before this pull request can be completed. And the tool really itself keeps tracks of all of those and automatically updates the status as it goes. So you can see here that Mike was working on a bug. So this change was to resolve this related work item, but it's broken. Some other really cool things about this is you can see the files that were updated. You can see exactly what was changed. So the old value and then the new value. So it makes it very easy for the people that are reviewing code to be able to identify what changed and really focus on those items. And then you can also see any of the commits that were associated with that. In addition, if there is something that does not seem right, then the reviewer can add a comment here and send that back to the original developer that was making those changes. In this situation, Mike was talking to himself. So he had removed a to-do but didn't change anything else. And so then he went ahead and updated it. But then it's also up to the reviewer to mark that comment as resolved, or if it's still outstanding. So really cannot pass that step until the reviewer says, yes, this is resolved and I approve, and all of the other policies are met. All right, so after then this pull request is completed and the code gets merged, then we really kick off then our CI build, which let me go over to the build. Now this is on one of the recent projects I was working on. They had, when we first got there, they had Azure DevOps. At that point in time, they're really only using it to hold their code. They also had all of their builds and deployments were all manual. So we started working with them and showing them the capabilities within Azure DevOps to even be able to automate their build and release pipelines. So this is really a huge value add. Just for example, we saved their developer, like each developer, by automating those items, we saved them, or they saved 3 hours per week per developer, and then 20 minutes per their sysadmins per deployment, which especially on the project we're working on, we were deploying a lot and very frequently throughout the week. So that's a lot of time savings, especially when you multiply that across the number of developers and sysadmins that they currently have involved in that process. So if I go here, I can see then the build steps that were included in this. So we can see that we have the prepare jobs. You can see exactly if there were any warnings or any issues. And this is really the results of what of that pipeline or that build. You can also then go directly to be able to see all of the status of any unit test or any test execution that was part of this build. So you can also have it built into the process that if this build fails, then it doesn't go to the next step and it has to get pushed back to the developer in order to resolve any of those issues and push it back. You can also integrate this with third-party tools. So one thing that we also utilize a lot on our projects is Azure DevOps has a ton of different extensions within their marketplace as well. So you can integrate with third-party tools. You can really use and integrate most tools at different technology stacks to make your pipelines and your processes work the way that you would like. So we even have incorporated static code analysis here. So the white source bolt that runs every time that we build a solution. So right from the results of the build, I can get to that build report to see if there are any vulnerabilities that we need to address. All right, so now once the build succeeds, now we're going to go, now the next step is going to be our release pipeline. So after that initial CI build releases, we have it set to kick off a deployment to the development environment, which then if everything succeeds with the development environment, then we auto deploy to the test environment. So one thing that you'll see here as well is that we do have a pre-approval step. So it might all auto deploy from dev to test, but we do have a manual approval process step here. So we're not auto deploying to prod right now. So this is really helpful as well if you need to do any manual testing, or if there's a different production release cadence. If you're not quite there yet to releasing automatically to production, then you can have a manual step here to prevent anything going to, say, past one step to the next step without an approval. So you can also see here as well, all of the artifacts that were changed or included in this release. So it has already gone to dev, and that succeeded, and to test. So I'm going to take a look at the most recent test deployment. So I can click into this, it has succeeded. I can also view all of the different steps for that release and all of the associated changes. I can see the commits that were included for each of these different packages, and also if there's any work items. So this one, I can also change this to say, show me the difference in work items from a past release to this one. So right down here, you can see that we did, this release included this user story for a dashboard order summary. So again, providing that full traceability from the project to the feature to the user story, then back to even the releases. All right. So now I can come in here. Let me go ahead and exit out of this guy. And I can come in here and say, yep, I have manually done my validation and test, and I am ready as, say, the product owner or the tester to push this change to production. So now all I have to do is click the approve button, and then it will automatically kick off the deployment. You can see that this is in progress then. All right. So that really takes us through our planning, our testing, our pipelines, getting it to the users. But say you want to dig into your data a little bit more and really be able to track and monitor, how are we doing? So one of my other favorite features, really as a delivery manager and even as a scrum master, is being able to track my team's progress as for our work items that we're working on, our current sprint that we're working on, as well as, where are we at with testing? What does regression testing look like if we have that? So we're going to create a new dashboard we'll just call it Team A Overview. Oh, actually, let me go back to the other project real quick. All right, let's go here and go to dashboards. All right, so let's go to Team A. All right, so out of the box, there are a bunch of different widgets that you can add to help you gain insights into how your team is doing or how your project is doing. So right now, I can go ahead and I'm going to add our sprint burn down, maybe our sprint capacity or our sprint overview. and maybe our velocity, so that we can see our velocity across different sprints. Now I can go into these as well and be able to configure what data do I want to see as part of this chart. So say I want to see the past 6 sprints. Since this sprint started a little late, we're gonna just update that so we can see, so that we can see the number of work items that were planned for sprint 4, which is the one that we just went ahead and planned. It was just there. There we go. All right. So you can see the work that we planned as we complete user stories, and you will be able to see the number of stories that we completed and our progress really to complete our commitments for this sprint. You'll also then be able to see our burn down and make sure that we see how well we're delivering here. One of the other things that you can do is you can create a query. So queries are very powerful as well. So queries, you can query really any work item type throughout the entire tool. So you can query on features or projects or epics, I should say, the tasks, the bugs. You can tie things together and really get results back for any field on any of those work items. So you can really start drilling into and digging into the data however you would like to. So let's go ahead and say for this query, I'm going to create a query where I want to see, really be able to track where we're at with our sprint. So I'm going to look for any user story that's not removed that is in our sprint. So I'm going to use this current iteration tag, and I can select Team A. So the tool already knows that I'm currently in sprint for Team A. So this makes it really easy too, that I don't have to come in here and manually update this iteration path value after each sprint. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and I get my results back. Say I really am going to want to also track where are we at with our story points and our commitments. And are we hitting those so far for this sprint? So I can save this, and I'm going to save it to my shared queries. And I'm just going to call it current sprint status. All right, so now I'm going to make things a little bit more fun. I'm going to update the state of these so that our chart looks a little bit more, it gives us a little bit more variation to it. So let's go back here. We'll go ahead and say that this one is closed. All right. Okay, so now let's go to our dashboard. So now I've created the query. Now I want to add a chart to my dashboard to be able to show us the current sprint status. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to select this chart for work items. It's going to add that tile there for me. And I can name this, so it is current sprint status. I can then also select the query that I just created called current sprint status. I can select the chart type. So for this example, I want to use a pie chart, and I want to group them, the work items by state. I also want them to be able to show me, because I'm really making sure that our team is going to hit our sprint commitments, our point commitments. So we're going to look at this from our points and where we're at with each points within regards to the different states. So now I have my current sprint status right on my dashboard. So there's a ton of different widgets that you can add, and a lot of different information that you can serve up and create or provide onto the dashboards. You can also create multiple dashboards as well. So if maybe we're looking at it from a sprint standpoint, so these are some more the dashboards with some more information for, say, a team. So we have our sprint velocity across the different sprints. We have our current sprint status. We can see what stories we have active, or how many stories we have active, how many bugs we have open, as well as there's one to be able to show any team member what work items are assigned to them currently. You could also create a dashboard that maybe goes across projects or across teams and really provide insight into how are we doing for this project, but also across teams. So this is also a widget. This burn down chart is a widget that comes with the analytics extension as well. So it really looks at a backlog of for a project and also predicts based off of our current velocity or historical velocity, as well as our historical backlog changes. When do we think that we're going to get done? You can also add things like cumulative flow diagrams to make sure that we are continuously delivering work items as well. You can also tie this in to charts with it for testing. So like I said, like I showed you guys the test plans before, you can create charts directly that tie back to the test suites or the test plan itself. All right. There is one other thing too that I wanted to show you that is also another powerful tool to gain additional insights. So now that we have our work items, we have our releases, there's also a connector that you can connect your Azure DevOps data directly into Power BI and be able to do some even more in-depth analysis on your project and your deliverables. So for example, you can tie it in to see what about our added scope compared to the value that we delivered. How much has our scope grown over the project? So this one had quite a bit of scope that increased. You can look at the value delivered per iteration. Maybe this was across multiple teams, but then even maybe drill down to how much does each story point cost us? So there's a lot of insights and a lot of feedback that you can get even from that connector, and you can definitely drill down even more with that Power BI connector. All right, so let's get back here. All right, so just to wrap up, I really took you through a high-level run through of Azure DevOps and really showed how you can use the tool then across the different teams within an organization, from an Agile project and portfolio management perspective, from being able to prioritize those projects and the strategic objectives to assigning them to the teams, but then also how to manage the work item getting done from the sprint backlog and the task and this team sprint board down to the test plans and how you can manage your sprint testing and utilize the test plans within Azure DevOps. Then we also went through being able to deliver that product and those changes to your customers using the Git pull requests, the builds, and then the release pipelines. And then how to additionally gain insights into how are we doing, are we on track, and how you can connect that to other tools as well. So at this point in time, I'd like to open up to you guys. If you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them at this point. All right. Great. Well, feel free to reach out to me or Amanda if you do have any additional questions. I'd be more than happy to follow up with you offline as well. But I do want to take a moment just to thank you all for joining me and listening to the webinar today. Have a great day.